A scream shattered the quiet stillness of the Hampton mansion. It was the kind of scream that didn't just pierce the air, it tore through the walls, shook the chandeliers, and froze the blood of anyone who heard it. In the bright white kitchen, a pot of boiling water flipped through the air, the scalding steam swirling like a violent ghost. "Stop! Please don't!" The cry belonged to Emily Carter, a young woman with delicate features and a wheelchair she had been bound to since the accident last winter. The boiling water splashed across her legs. She screamed again, a raw, trembling sound that echoed through every room. Across from her stood Margaret Carter, a woman with silver hair tied in a perfect bun, wearing a pearl-grey sweater and expression as cold as snowfall. The billionaire's mother. The woman the whole country called America's Iron Matriarch. But right now, she just looked furious. "You've weakened my son," Margaret hissed, "and I will not let you chain him with your pity." She grabbed the pot again, still bubbling, and lifted it higher. Emily's eyes widened in terror. She tried to wheel backward, but her hands shook so violently that her palms slipped from the wheels. "Mrs. Carter, please, please don't do this." But Margaret didn't stop. She tilted the pot. More boiling water began to spill. And then, bang! The kitchen door swung open so hard it slammed against the wall. A tall figure stood in the doorway, briefcase still in hand, suit freshly creased from an unexpected early arrival from a business trip. Ethan Carter, 38 years old, CEO of Carter Tech, one of America's youngest self-made billionaires. His voice came out in a single stunned breath. "Mom, what are you doing?" For a moment, the world froze. Steam rose off Emily's burned legs. The pot slipped from Margaret's fingers and clattered onto the marble floor, its metal bottom ringing sharply against the tile. Ethan stared at his mother, disbelief cracking across his expression like lightning. Margaret stared back, frozen, the pot at her feet, her hands trembling. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered, but the words sounded weak, even to her. Ethan dropped his briefcase. He rushed to Emily, kneeling beside her. The smell of burnt skin hit him like a punch in the gut. "Oh God! Emily!" His voice broke. "Who did this to you?" Emily's lips quivered. Tears mixed with sweat, pain twisting across her fragile features. Before she could speak, Margaret stepped forward. Her voice was brittle, cracking under pressure, but still clung to stubbornness. "She provoked me. She lies. She exaggerates everything." "Exaggerates?" Ethan snapped, turning on her. His eyes were wildfire. "You burned her." Margaret's face blanched. "I was just trying to teach her." "Teach her what?" His voice boomed through the kitchen. Emily sobbed quietly. Her hands clutched her lap, the skin blistering, turning red, swelling. Ethan scooped her up carefully into his arms, his jaw tightening as he felt her body tremble. "You're going to the hospital," he whispered to her. "I've got you." Margaret took a step forward. "Ethan, she's manipulating you. She's always. Stop talking." His voice hit like ice. "Just stop." For the first time in her life, Margaret Carter fell silent. Ethan carried his wife out of the kitchen. 1 year earlier. Detroit, Michigan. The smell of engine grease and the rumble of old machinery filled the air. A much younger Emily, before the wheelchair, before the scarring, was smiling softly as she watched Ethan fix the engine of an old Ford truck. He wasn't a billionaire then. He wasn't even close. He was a struggling automotive engineer who rented a tiny studio above an abandoned bakery. Emily was a physical therapist trainee at a community clinic, and she was the only person who believed in him when his startup idea failed again and again. Back then, Ethan had said something she never forgot. "If one day I make it big, I'll take you out of this city. I'll give you a life where you'll never have to worry again." Emily believed him. She always did. And 2 years later, he made good on his promise. Carter Tech exploded in popularity. A smart home invention he created ended up getting picked up by 3 national corporations. Within months, he went from broke to being featured on Forbes. They moved into a mansion in the Hampton, 12 bedrooms, glass walls, ocean view, private gardens, and enough luxury to drown in. But Emily didn't care for the gold or the ocean or the marble floors. She cared about Ethan. And Ethan cared about her. Only one thing stood between them. Margaret Carter. A woman who believed Emily wasn't good enough. Not wealthy enough. Not strong enough. Not perfect enough for her son's rising fortune. She tolerated the marriage, barely. Until the accident. A rainy night. A slippery road. A drunk driver. A crash that broke Emily's spine and bound her to a wheelchair. Ethan stayed by her side. He swore nothing would change. But Margaret changed. She believed Emily had become a burden, a liability, an anchor pulling her son's empire down. And in the shadows of the mansion, resentments grew like weeds. Back to the present. As Ethan carried Emily out the front door, Margaret called after him. "You're making a mistake. She's poisoning you against your own family." He stopped at the threshold and turned slowly. The rain outside poured heavily, soaking the porch in sheets of silver. His voice was low, dangerous, trembling with a betrayal so deep it seemed to echo. "You're not my family right now." Margaret's face collapsed. Her eyes widened with a pain she didn't expect, a pain she never imagined her son could inflict. "You're choosing her over me." "I'm choosing what's right," he said. Lightning flashed behind him. He stepped into the rain with Emily in his arms. And as the storm swallowed them, Margaret stood alone in the doorway, hands shaking, breath unsteady, realizing that for the first time in her life, she had gone too far. The emergency room lights were harsh, white, and cold. Emily lay on a stretcher, trembling, her skin blistered and red. Nurses moved around her quickly, their voices overlapping in urgent, clipped tones. "Second-degree burns. Prepare a cooling rinse. She's going into shock." Ethan stood frozen beside her, his hands shaking so badly he had to force them into fists just to stay steady. He felt like the world had closed in around him, like every breath was a struggle. When the doctor finally approached, Ethan felt his heart stop. "We stopped the burning," the doctor said gently. "She'll heal, but the pain will be significant for a while." Ethan nodded slowly. "Can I see her?" The doctor hesitated. "She's sedated. She needs rest." Ethan leaned against the wall, pressing a hand to his forehead. His throat tightened with a grief he could barely contain. Boiling water. His mother. His mom did that. How had his life reached this point? The last thing Margaret ever wanted was to hurt him. She lived for him. She shaped her whole world around his success. Yet somehow, she was the one who had caused the deepest wound. A wound no billionaire could hide. He sank into a waiting room chair and felt the weight of every mistake pressing onto his shoulders. And that's when a soft, shaky voice spoke behind him. "Ethan." He turned. Emily was awake. Nurse Abby gently wheeled her closer, the sedation wearing off just enough for her to recognize him. "Hey," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Emily blinked slowly. Her eyes were heavy, clouded with pain, but still soft, still full of that inexplicable purity he always admired. "It wasn't your fault," she whispered. He swallowed hard. "It should have never happened. I shouldn't have left you alone with her." Emily's gaze drifted downward. "She's your mother. I never wanted this to happen." "But she almost killed you," he said, voice cracking. Emily didn't respond for a moment. Her fingers gently touched his wrist, the touch so light it felt like a butterfly wing. "She's hurting," Emily whispered. "She's been hurting for a long time. And I've never known why." Ethan frowned. His mother. Hurting? Margaret Carter was many things, strict, controlling, sharp-tongued but hurting. He had never thought of her that way. Before he could respond, the nurse signaled that Emily needed to rest, and he reluctantly stepped out into the hallway. As he walked toward the exit, his phone vibrated. A text message. From an unknown number. "You need to see what was left at your house." Attached was a photo. A small wooden box sitting on his front porch. The lid carved with a name. "For Ethan, from Dad." Ethan froze. His father had been dead for 15 years. Another message came. Your mother has been lying to you. His heart dropped. He immediately left the hospital, his mind racing as rain splattered across the windshield. Every mile he drove felt heavier than the last. When he reached the mansion, the storm had calmed into a drizzle. The house sat eerily quiet, lights off except for the dim glow in the foyer. The wooden box sat exactly where the photo showed. He picked it up slowly. It felt old, maybe decades old. The carvings were worn, the edges chipped. He carried it inside. Margaret sat on the living room couch, elbows on her knees, hair disheveled. She looked smaller than he had ever seen her, almost fragile. Her eyes lifted when she saw the box. Instant panic. "Ethan," she whispered. "Put that down." He stared at her. "Why?" She stood quickly, stepping toward him. "That box is nothing. Just something your father left behind. It's not important." He narrowed his eyes. "Really? Because someone texted me. Someone who said you've been lying to me." Margaret froze. Ethan set the box on the coffee table. "Mom," he whispered, "what's in it?" Margaret sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "Ethan, please don't open it." "Then tell me," he said. "Tell me what I need to know." For the first time in his entire life, the Iron Matriarch looked completely defeated. Her voice trembled. "Your father didn't die the way I told you. He didn't leave us. He didn't abandon us." Ethan's breath caught. Margaret looked up, eyes wet. "He was murdered." Silence fell like thunder. And then she whispered something that sent a chill through Ethan's entire body. "And the person who caused it is connected to Emily." Ethan felt the room tilt beneath him. "Murdered," he repeated, barely able to form the word. Margaret nodded slowly, her fingers trembling against her pearls, the first time he had ever seen fear touch her face. "Mom, what are you talking about? Who would kill Dad?" Margaret didn't answer immediately. Her eyes drifted to the wooden box sitting on the coffee table, the same box she had kept hidden for 15 years. "Before I say anything," she whispered, "I need you to think about something." She looked up at him, her expression heavy, pleading. "If someone you love hid a terrible truth from you, would you want to know it? Even if it shattered everything?" Ethan didn't blink. "Yes." Margaret exhaled shakily. "Your father, Thomas Carter, he owned a small auto shop before you were born. He was kind, hard-working, honest, but he got tangled with the wrong people." She swallowed hard. "He was being blackmailed. And the person who started the blackmail was part of a family that lived 3 blocks from us in Detroit." Ethan frowned. "Mom, what family?" Margaret's voice cracked. "The Harrisons." Ethan froze. Harrison. Emily's maiden name. His stomach twisted into knots. "That doesn't make sense," he said quietly. "Emily's family. Her father was a high school janitor. Her mother worked in a diner. They weren't criminals." Margaret shook her head. "Her uncle was Victor Harrison. He ran an underground loan ring, targeting small business owners. Your father borrowed money from him when the shop almost went bankrupt. Victor used that to trap him. Threatened us. Threatened you." Ethan swallowed, his throat dry. "What happened to Dad?" Margaret closed her eyes. "One night, your father arranged a meeting to pay off the debt and end everything. He never came home." She opened her eyes again, watery, hollow. "They found his car in the river." The room fell silent except for the soft ticking of the antique wall clock. Ethan felt like he couldn't breathe. Emily, connected to his father's death? No, that couldn't be real. Emily's family had always been humble, gentle, welcoming. She didn't even speak to most of her relatives anymore. How could she possibly be tied to something like this? He shook his head. "Mom, this has nothing to do with Emily. She didn't even know Victor. She told me he died when she was a kid. That's because her family hid it." Margaret's voice rose in frustration, or was it desperation? They covered up the truth to protect their own. And you married into that. Her words stabbed through him, but something felt off. Margaret had always hated Emily, always seen her as unworthy. Was this truth, or manipulation? He stared at her. Why didn't you tell me any of this before? Margaret hesitated. Because you were happy. Because you loved her. And I didn't want to lose you again. Ethan clenched his jaw. Mom, did you really pour boiling water on her because of this? Because of something that happened decades ago? Something she had no part in? Margaret didn't respond. Her silence was an answer he didn't want. A question formed in Ethan's mind, sharp, painful, unavoidable. How far should someone go to protect their child, and when does protection turn into destruction? He ran a hand through his hair, trying to think clearly. Emily needed him. She was in the hospital, burned, alone, terrified. And meanwhile, he was standing in front of a mother who had kept deadly secrets, secrets twisted by time, grief, and resentment. He reached for the wooden box. Margaret lunged forward. Ethan, don't. But he opened it. Inside was a stack of old letters, a worn leather wallet, a rusted key, a folded police report, and a photo of a man he barely remembered, his father. He unfolded the police report first. Cause of death, suspected homicide. Lead suspect, Victor Harrison. Case unresolved. His pulse hammered against his ribs. Below it was a last letter addressed to Margaret, in his father's handwriting. Margaret, if I don't come home tonight, promise me you'll keep Ethan safe. Promise me you'll never let him get caught up in this. I love him. And I love you. The paper shook in Ethan's hands. He felt a tear slip down his cheek, something he hadn't done since he was a child. When he looked up, Margaret was crying too. Not angry tears. Not manipulative tears. Real ones. I lost your father, Ethan, she whispered. I couldn't lose you too. I couldn't risk you loving someone from that family. She broke off, sobbing quietly. And then Emily became weak. Broken. A weight you didn't deserve. I thought I was saving you. Ethan stared at her, speechless, horrified, confused, and aching. He whispered a question that millions of viewers would ask themselves in a heartbeat. If your mother committed a crime because she thought she was protecting you, would you forgive her? Margaret looked up at him, hope flickering in her tear-streaked face. But Ethan's next words drained the room of air. Mom, I need to talk to Emily. And when I do, I'll know if you're telling the truth, or if jealousy made you rewrite history. Margaret's lips parted. Ethan. He stepped back. This isn't over. And he walked out, leaving his mother in the silence she had built herself. The hospital room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the bedside lamp. Emily rested quietly, her burns wrapped, her breathing steadier than before. Rain ticked gently against the window, a gentle rhythm that felt strangely calming. Ethan stepped inside. She opened her eyes immediately, as if she'd been waiting for him. You look shaken, she whispered. He pulled a chair beside her. I talked to my mom. Emily's expression softened with sadness rather than fear. What happened? Ethan hesitated. How could he drop a truth heavy enough to crush two families? My dad didn't die in an accident, he began. He was murdered. Emily's eyes widened. And the man suspected of killing him. He swallowed hard. Was your uncle? Emily's breath caught. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't deny anything. Instead, she whispered something Ethan never expected. I know. His entire world tilted. You what? A tear slid down Emily's cheek. I found out when I was 15. My parents hid it from me because they thought the truth would destroy me. When we got older, I tried to stay away from my extended family. I cut every tie I could. But I never knew how to tell you. Ethan sat back, stunned. All this time, both families had been hiding the same wound, the same scar, the same history soaked in grief. And in the middle of it all stood the two of them, broken by secrets they never asked for. "I didn't keep it from you because I wanted to lie," Emily whispered. "I kept it because I wanted you to love me without remembering the worst part of my family's past." She looked down at her burnt legs, trembling, wrapped in bandages. "Do you hate me now?" Ethan reached for her hand instantly. "No. I don't hate you. Not even for a second." He shook his head. "Emily, none of this was your fault." He held her hand tighter. "But my mother." Emily's eyes dimmed. "I know she doesn't love me. I know she sees me as broken. But I never wanted to be the reason your family hurt again." Silence settled between them, heavy, honest, painful. Ethan's voice was low. "A part of me wants to protect my mom. But another part knows what she did to you. Can't just be forgiven with a hug." He paused, then asked softly, "If the person who hurt you was someone I loved, what would you want me to do?" Emily thought for a moment. "I would want you to choose what makes you a good man, not what makes you a good son." Her answer hit him like a silent thunderclap. The door suddenly opened. Margaret stepped inside. Ethan stood instantly. "Mom." But Margaret wasn't storming. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't cold. She was crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The words sounded foreign in her mouth, like they had never been spoken before. She looked at Emily. "I was wrong." Her voice cracked. "I let my pain turn into poison. I punished you for something you never did. And I hurt the woman my son loves." Emily blinked, surprised. Margaret stepped closer, trembling. "I lost my husband. I lost myself. And today, I almost lost my son too." She looked at Ethan, tears streaming freely. "And the moment I saw you walk out, I realized I became the monster that broke this family in the first place." The room fell into a stillness so fragile it felt like it could shatter at any moment. Margaret sank to her knees beside Emily's bed. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she whispered. "I'm asking for a chance to change." Ethan felt a sting in his eyes. Emily hesitated, then said softly, "I don't want your hate. I want your healing." Margaret broke down crying. For the first time, 3 broken hearts in one room finally beat in the same rhythm. 2 weeks later, charges were filed. Margaret cooperated fully. She avoided prison by agreeing to counseling, anger management, and community service at a burn recovery center. A place she had once believed her pride was too big to enter. Now she entered it willingly. Emily began physical therapy again. Ethan stood by her through every step, literally and emotionally. And the wooden box. Ethan donated it, along with a large grant to a Detroit Victims Memorial Center. His father's memory now helped others heal. The cycle of pain had ended where it started. As the story closed, Ethan sat beside Emily on the porch, watching the sunset stretch across the sky. He whispered, "No more secrets. No more lies. From now on, just healing." Emily smiled. "For all of us." What would you do if you discovered your partner's family was connected to your past trauma? Do you believe people can truly change after causing deep pain? If your mother hurt the person you love, could you forgive her, or not? Which matters more, protecting your family or protecting what's right? Share your answer in the comments. Your opinion might help someone going through something similar. If this story touched your heart, hit the like button. Share it with someone who needs this message. And subscribe to my channel for more emotional, powerful, real-life inspired stories. Your support helps me continue bringing you stories that heal, teach, and inspire.